thanks for coming around. I know it's one of the last days of the talks of the day, that way around. It's been an interesting and also long day, and I don't want to keep you away from drinks too long. So let's talk about Nuxt 3, just Vue, and a bit of magic. So yeah, about me, I'm Alex. I am a web engineering consultant by day, so helping companies working on things mainly with Vue and Nuxt, but also other technologies. I'm also a speaker and instructor, so I give workshops and speak at conferences, as you can see. I am also in the Nuxt.js team, so I hope that's enough to ensure that I know what I'm talking about. And I also have social media. I run a little YouTube channel for a few weeks now, also streaming regularly. So if you're interested in that and more content around that, feel free to follow me, take a look. And also, finally, I rewrote my website, which I'll quickly just showcase for a second, because I think it looks pretty okay. That was about time, because the old one was horrible. So also there, that's all open source, and I even have a video where I go through what I did there, if you're interested in that. There, and also I am on GitHub under not the usual name, because, well, that was the name when everything else was taken, not even my full last name anyway. So yeah, if you encounter that name, you know that's me, or also the image. Okay, who of you is using Vue every now and then? Okay, almost everybody. And we all enjoy using Vue. For those who don't use it, you should definitely give it a try. But sometimes Vue might not be enough. Sometimes we want a bit more. And there's where Nuxt comes in. So Nuxt.js is a progressive framework. It's based on Vue 3 and Vite. And it's fully written in TypeScript, which means you can use TypeScript and get all the goodies. You can also just use JavaScript and still get a lot out of it. Just not the static type inference, of course, but still autocomplete and all that. It's also very performant and lightweight out of the box. So we set some sensible defaults to ensure you have a great experience. What you do then, like loading 2 megabytes of images, is up to you, of course, so please don't. And it's very versatile. So we can build typical SPAs, we can build static sites, like with static site generation, truly static, so no API involved anymore. We can use server-side rendering on demand. We can have incremental static regeneration, and you can probably smash in even more acronyms over there. TLDR, you can do a lot with that. And the best part is you can mix all of them up. You can just say, oh yeah, this site, the index page should be pre-rendered. The admin page, we don't need server-side rendering for that, it's fine. It can be a plain SPA, and some pages for our products, they should be revalidated every 60 seconds. So you can mix all of that in a single application, which is amazing. And one of the main benefits is we try to stay open. We don't want to have some kind of vendor lock-in, so we can deploy on technically any platform. So everywhere where Node runs, Nuxt runs. Everywhere where you can just host static HTML files, you can host a static site. And it doesn't matter if you go for Vercel, Netlify, AWS, Azure, GCP, whatever you name it, it will work. And if you have an in-house service that says, oh yeah, we have this strange hosting requirements, you can even write a preset, it's called, for the server engine to run there too. Mostly you don't have to because other people already did, but just saying, it's possible. And also talking about, for example, running on the edge, we really optimized for cold starts and serverless because they're in like a couple milliseconds. So like we don't take seconds to start the application. It's really, really tiny amount that goes for the cold start, which is amazing because nowadays so many people are like, oh, you want to run anything on, I don't know, edge handlers and workers and serverless. And yeah, compared to Nuxt 2, where it was a bit of a pain, it runs very nicely with Nuxt 3 here. And another important thing is you have an application say, I don't want that feature. I don't need this and this. Other frameworks say, okay, you bound with that, you have to use it. And Nuxt to say, just don't. Either change the configuration or, well, you don't have to even fork it. You can change the behavior by adding modules or by hooking into the framework and saying, okay, just don't do that, do something different. So technically, all the requirements you have can be fulfilled with a little bit of effort, of course. And now we come to live coding, because I have quite some slides left. I could explain you, oh, we have this cool feature and that, but in the end, it would be nicer to just showcase that right away, because that's, I think, an even better way of learning instead of going through some static slides. Okay, so let's go to VS Code over here. Is it big enough for the last rows? Can you see stuff? Okay, nodding, that's great. And I prepared a little Nuxt demo folder over here. This is basically a project that comes out when we run something like npx nuxi init, and then the name here. I just spare that because of the internet. So what we can do, I already installed everything. We can run pnpm-dev, which is the package manager that I prefer, and everything runs now. So let's go back to the browser, open localhost 3000 over here. And this is the welcome page you get straight away when you install a Nuxt application. It says, hey, okay, awesome. You can start right away by removing this Nuxt welcome thing in app.vue with your own code. So let's do that straight away. Let's say app.vue, we're here. We have set Nuxt welcome. Yeah, like this should be fine. I will just hide the console because we don't need it that much anymore. Maybe like that. Here we go. And we can remove it and say, hey, Frontmania. If we go back, it's white, it's tiny, but it's there. Okay, that was easy. Interestingly, under the hood, as I said, it's using Vite, so HMR is really fast. I can't show how fast because if I switch back and forth and save, it's already there. So it's really astonishing how fast servers can be. So that you don't have to stare on a white page all the time, let's install a Pico CSS, which is just a little CSS for like not applying much classes, just straight away slapping some styles on there. So let's install that, and we take the CSS from here. And how do we do that? So we have our nuxt.config.ts, and in here we just say DevTools enabled. What this will tell us, we've seen a bit. And here we say, okay, maybe we should add in our app top-level key, there is a key called head. And in here we can say, okay, let's add some links. They come into the head of our HTML document. And let's say, okay, we want rel style sheet. And okay, we have a style sheet. Let's go with href and put all that in here. That's nothing you have to remember. That's also, of course, all documented. And you don't even have to do it in Nuxt config, but also can do that dynamically in your application. So you can even say, okay, we go to app.vue, open a script part over here. We use script setup. We could also use TypeScript here. It doesn't matter that much. And we could say use head, use the composable. And the same idea. Here we could say link and do the same that we did before. But as we want that app white for now, we can skip that and just go back, close this, and see, nice, that looks better. It's at least black now, so we don't get blinded, let's say that. And now maybe we add a little class here and say container, and maybe we make this one an h1. And okay, we can bear with that. That works, nice. Okay, next we see down there, here, we see a little symbol. So this symbol, it even shows up and says toggle Nuxt DevTools. I could also use Option-Shift-D to toggle them. And it opens straight away and brings up the own frameworks DevTools. We're one of the few frameworks that actually have that, and I know there are quite some people jealous of that, so that's a chance for the ecosystem to build their own DevTools. But it's amazing. We see the Nuxt version running on, the Vue version, the components, and way more. And I won't go through all of that because there's a lot to explore. There could be even an own talk. So yeah, a question.
Is this the same as the Vue DevTools you can install as an extension?
Is this the same as the Vue DevTools? No, the Vue DevTools, I have them here as well in my Nitro tab. The Nuxt DevTools, they're actually embedded in your application, while the Vue DevTools are a Chrome or Firefox extension. So the Vue DevTools are here, right? And we also see the component here, for example. We can inspect that. The Nuxt DevTools are especially focused on Nuxt, not only in Vue, and they run in your application, so you can even do cool things with it. Like, let's say, we have modules. So as I mentioned before, we can extend Nuxt with modules. And here you can say, okay, let's install a new module, and we can look up which modules are available. There are, of course, way more, but these are the ones that are entered at the Nuxt.js website. Yes? These are also NPM packages. You can do the same with the modules that you do through the Nuxt DevTools also by just installing them through the console. But let's say we want to install the icon package. I just click here, and it says, okay, it will be executed pnpm add Nuxt icon latest -d for the dev dependencies, and ignore any kind of scripts like post, install, whatever. And we see here, oh, there will be something added to the Nuxt config. So the DevTools through RPC can actually make changes to our files if we let them. Of course, then will be a restart happening because if we change the config, the server has to restart. and we just push install, and you see installing, installing, installing. Let's wait for a little bit. Nuxt is restarting, and here we go. The icons module is installed. Okay, what does it do actually? Let's take a look. First, I proved to you here, this was added. This is how you add a module. Here you see it better, a module to the Nuxt config. And also in our dependencies, we see this is actually installed over here, Nuxt icon. That's right there. And what we can do now is we can say, okay, we can use an icon component, and we can say name, and I don't know, say hero icons, academic cap. Let's say we make it self-closing, and we go back here, and it's a bit tiny, but let's say style, I don't know, font size, 100 points. That's a bit better. So we can use, as it's also advertised here, one of the 100,000 plus ready-to-use icons straight away that are open source. You can use Material Design icons here, hero icons, it doesn't matter. You can all use them that way. So that's a very simple way of using any kind of icon set you want. You can even prepare your own ones if you want to. And we didn't do much. We just installed the module. The component here, we didn't even import it. It's automatically imported thanks to Nuxt auto import. And we're good to go. So one other thing we could do is we could also say lazy icon here. So if we want to have some lazy loading, we could do it by just prefixing it with lazy. And that works for all the components that are available, even your own ones that you write. So once again, with performance in mind, if you have something that's only below default or like a modal that opens on click, you put lazy in front, and it will not be loaded straight away, but only when it's needed, or, for example, in the background when the browser is idle. Or the priority will be a bit lower if it's below default. So let's put it back to icon, and yeah, we use the module here, we're good to go. So, but what do we want to achieve during this talk? I was thinking of something my girlfriend hates a lot when I do it, dad jokes. So she's not here today. Let's check out the API called icon has dad jokes. Sorry, that's white again here. And the idea is we can call the API and we get some random jokes. So let's do this. Okay, did you hear about the kidnapping in school? It's okay, he woke up. Thanks, great. So now, okay, this is text, but the documentation just said, oh yeah, if we send the header accept application JSON, we can fetch a joke. So let's just do that straight away. We have our app.vue here, and once again we can open the script part. So do script setup, and yeah, say const data, or let's say const result is fetch. We can use the fetch API. Who of you ever used the fetch API, the browser-built fetch API? Almost everybody. Who's using it regularly? Plain, just like that. One or two. Who's using Axios? Okay, I see. Why? No, of course it's fine. We can also use the fetch API here, but we do a little trick and just append a dollar, which is $fetch. And that way, that's a little fetch wrapper from another package is auto-imported called ohmyfetch. And that fetch wrapper actually spares you from going for, oh, response okay, is that fine, to convert it to JSON, so all the annoying stuff. So we could do that, but we go even one step further and use a Vue composable called useFetch, which uses $fetch under the hood. And here we say, okay, let's provide a URL. So this one. Let me quickly close this here. Okay, and we get a result here. We also await that because it's an asynchronous operation, right? And let's just render our result over here. Okay, let's close the API documentation, and we see that's not exactly what we want. Let's close the DevTools as well here, and we see, oh, that's quite some HTML. We want the JSON response, right? So, of course, we forgot to add the headers. Let's do the headers here and say, thanks, accept application JSON, thanks Copilot. No, we don't need to convert it to JSON. That will happen automatically. And we go back, and now we see, okay, we have the data, we have the ID, and also we see this here in data is the payload, what we received, so basically the response, not the payload. And then we have pending false, error null, status success. So let's destructure that result over here and say, let's get the data. And okay, data, all right, let's render that over here again, make some nice formatting. And we see the data coming back with an ID, a joke, and a status. So far, so good. Sore throats or pain in the neck. Yeah. Well. Okay, now we can even say data.joke. That's also fine. And let's add a language TS here. So now it becomes interesting. We see data is unknown. That's nice. That's great. Some of you might have seen the TypeScript talk from before. Unknown is, of course, the better any. We don't care. Like, oh, it's not let TypeScript do nothing, but more like we don't know what it is. You have to check. We kind of are lazy, so we just do an any here. Sorry for that. And that's fine. OK. We also have an error property. So the good part is that, let's say we just do maybe record string unknown here. It's also fine. And let's have a look. And here we see, if we check the type of data, it's a ref, so a reactive reference in Vue. And that either contains a record that we just define string unknown, or null. Why null? Well, if there's an error, data will be null, and error will exist. So in this case, error, once again, can be a fetch error or null. So if something with the fetching goes wrong, the error will trigger. Okay. So of course, data might not exist. We just go with that for now. It's fine. And it still works. Wonderful. I got a reversible jacket for Christmas. I can't wait to see how it turns out. Wow. I love it. OK, nice. Now we have an app.vue. But an app.vue, well, we have one single page for application. It's a truly single page application. Cool. But we want more. Let's go back to the dev tools. We could also do it manually, but let's check. And we have another tab called Pages. And it says, create pages index.vue to enable routing. And because I'm a lazy developer, just push that button. And we restart. In the meantime, we see, if we open that, pages index is here. That's pretty cool. And now we see, oh, nice, great. If we close the dev tools, we have some content over here. And another joke, yes, yes. So where does that come from? We go back to the pages index and see, OK, we can use the current route with use route. And we can set them up. That's great. In our app.vue, there was this little next page down here added, which actually renders the content of the page. So we can just take this. Maybe what we should keep is the container, actually. That wouldn't be a bad idea to say, like, OK, we have a container still here. And in here, let's just render what we had before. So the container is not that important. But we can render this. And we don't need that part now. OK. So we're back. Oh, the data is gone. Yeah, maybe data fetching in the script should also be moved over. And let's do that over here. We're good to go. What is the leading cause of dry skin? Towels, yeah. Correct. OK, so we have an index page now. Cool. So basically, we still have a single page application. Anyway, we could now say in our app.vue, we can add headers, footers, whatever. We can also use layouts, but that's a bit out of scope. So we can say, oh, maybe the admin page has a sidebar, the main page doesn't. So we can put in a layout that is called sidebar. We put a sidebar in there, and the default layout doesn't have one. Anyway, we stick with exactly this. We could also remove the app.vue or just remove this part here. So that's the very easy app.vue here. But because of that container class that we want, we have to keep it. Otherwise, our CSS will not work as expected. OK. And we were talking a bit about jokes. So let's add a page, we say random.vue. And in here, we want to fetch a random joke, which is basically what we're doing already. So let's just copy that over here. Right? OK. It complains a bit because it doesn't know the file yet. Sometimes it is sadly necessary for the extension just say, OK, you know what? Let's just reload the window. We're good. It will auto-import everything here. It detects it. It's fine. No worry. Please just don't scream at me. OK. And one more thing what we want is we have a random joke. And as we saw before, if we remove this once again and go to a random over here, which just works out of the box, we have this ID. So let's say we take this ID and we just write /ID over here like this. And then something should appear. Right now it doesn't because that page doesn't exist. So let's create a dynamic page, which means we say in square brackets, for example, ID here. And that ID, well, we just create a Vue component and just render exactly this, $out params ID. You just say, okay, let's render the parameter that's passed. If I pass something else over here, it would be exactly that. We don't do anything with that, we just output it. And now we want to use it. So what we saw before, we can do const route as use route to get the current route. And then, of course, we can say const ID is, for example, route.params.id. And then we can say ID. That's the same. Great. We just did the same with a few more lines. But OK, let's now fetch the joke based on the ID. So we take our fetching logic over here. That arrow, we don't need it because there won't be any error, I hope. And now let's just say we do the same here. But there's one more thing we want to do. We actually want to say /j plus ID, and maybe a slash here, and convert it to a template string because we're are tidy developers making this very nice. Still using any though. Don't judge me. we will type in a bit, no worries. And we still need the headers. That's very important here. And now we can render the data in this string interpolation syntax with double square brackets. And here we see we can refresh it all the time. We get exactly the right joke for the ID. So, and of course, if we add another ID here, it can happen that it says, oh, joke ID not found. Also makes sense. That would be very random. Cool. So we did that. Now there's one more thing. Who knows what server-side rendering is? OK, then I don't have to explain it. That's great. Very important. By default, server-side rendering is going on. Question, who does not know what server-side rendering is? Oh, come on, the other 2 or 3 people, put your hand. OK, good. So if we now say, we take a look at the page source here, right? That's the HTML from our site right away. And we increase it a bit. And we, for example, would search for, let's go back to the actual joke before. That makes a bit more sense. And check out this. So over here. And now here we'd say, OK, we look for source roads, right? Then we see source roads. Over here, there, it exists straight away in the HTML. So the good part is Nuxt by default renders these things on the server unless you disable it. And it will also provide the data, so they can be transferred from the server to the client, and then Vue can pick them up again, and the application is reactive. That process is called hydration. And it can cause some errors. Long story, another talk. So far, so good. Now, we can do way more with that. We can, for example, say, hey, we have that random page. Let's go back to that. And I will, yes?
Let's go. Is this server-side rendered or client-side?
It's server-side rendered, because everything you can see in the Vue source, that's on the server. If you open the inspector, if you do like this, that can also be client manipulated. But if you actually do Vue source, that's my go-to of easy debugging, everything there is truly coming from the server, because there's no JavaScript executed.
And if you want to do that client-side, you have to do another tag? Or
if you want to do that purely client-side, you have a couple of options. You can disable it for the whole application. You can use a client-only component. You can also say, here, server false. So you can do that and say, OK, you know what? Let's not render that here, and we don't have source roads anywhere. It's gone, as you can see. So there are a couple of ways to do that, depending on if you want it for the whole application, a component, a request.
Oh, it's not in different files or something?
No. But you can also say, OK, I have a file that's only ever rendered on the client, not on the server. You can do that too. So that's also possible. So far, so good. And now let's go back to the random page here, and let's do something really fun. Let's say unmounted. So ensure that's on the client side. We want to refresh it. Right? Let's say here, refresh the joke every 5 seconds. OK. And useFetch also gives a refresh function. So we can, in theory, just say, let's give an interval, call refresh, and maybe leave that here for documentation purposes. And if we go back now to random, oh, we also already here, refresh this, and wait 5 seconds. It changed. So also there, refreshing data is very easy. You can also say, OK, don't fetch straight away, execute it later. There are lots of options to play around with this. And you can even create an own composable just by saying, okay, I want to fetch something somehow. So there are lots of low-level building blocks as well, which we sadly can't make time-wise. So let's see what else we can do. Because now we were a lot on the front end, and it's amazing. We learned about lazy loading, auto-importing, fetching data, great. But what is a front end without a back end? So let's jump into Java, PHP. Nah, I'm kidding, of course not. We still stay in the Nuxt ecosystem and use Nuxt server engine. So we have this wonderful server folder over here, which is, besides the TS config, empty. So what we do now is we create a folder called API, and in there we create a file, say test.ts. And in here, we just say we create an event handler, a Nitro event handler, and this should return something. What should it return? Any ideas? Copilot? Psst. Any ideas? Not this. Any ideas? Just shout it.
A bad joke.
A bad joke. Okay. Data. A bad joke. I take that literal. Maybe that's already a bad joke. Oh, actually, okay, let's see. What do you call fake noodle? An impasta. Okay, Copilot, well done, great. Okay, now we have that, and apparently if we now use /API/test in our bar, our address bar, we see that bad joke is there. And we don't have to do, I don't know, send the response, stringify it to JSON, whatnot. We just have that. We just return it as an object. Pretty cool. But what if I tell you there's more? There's way more. So let's just go to the index again, here. And let's not fetch the joke here, but let's fetch something else. Let's remove everything here, just have use fetch here. And the data, we just remove everything. And in here, when I start to type, API test, we just wrote that file. How even better. If I hover over data, it says data string or null. And if we go really crazy and even say like, I don't know, as const, then maybe it says even, oh, read only data, a bad joke. What do you call a fake noodle? An imposter. So Nuxt gives us, thanks to the server engine, end-to-end type safety. We have the full type safety because whatever will be returned from the API route, we have the type available straight here, and we don't even have to do something for that. We just have to provide a URL. Pretty cool. So you can use, for example, Nitro as a backend for frontend, aggregating data, calling other APIs, and everything inside your Nuxt application is end-to-end type safe. Of course, you can still do something like, let's parse the API calls with Zod and ensure that things are also fine in runtime, but that part, if basically the result of your API is not just an assertion, let's say as unknown, this will be really fun, as number. Yeah, never do this, please. Of course, now we see it's a number and it's total bullshit because we said so. But as long as your API handlers, the event handlers, as long as they're not lying or badly written, you have the type safety. So that's already pretty cool. And we can do even more. Like now we got into a really interesting part. Let's create a utils folder here and say jokes. Yes. So let's really apply the backend for front-end pattern a little bit. And what we do here is, okay, let's say we have a function called fetch joke. And we either have an ID, that's a string, and we can say, okay, if, no, not the data straight there, and we say if, let's do another function, fetch joke with ID, and here we actually have the ID, if you want that. And let's say, we don't even have to export that. Let's see, and we have the function fetch random joke, maybe fetch random joke, and we do something here. Let's say what we did in our random file over here. We just copied it over, like this part. Okay, let's take that and say we put it in each of these. So we just say we do that, and now we actually use the $fetch because the composables we used before, they are not available on the server side because they're Vue and Nuxt related, and the server is already alive and lifecycle technically earlier than the Nuxt application. So we can't use any kind of composable. It's a very common question. Can I use the Pinia store in here? Can I use, I don't know, a window local storage? No, you cannot. That's okay. You don't need to. You really don't have to. Yes, never, thanks. Okay, we have the $fetch here. We can make an async function and say const result equals await the whole thing. And well, we can say return result, not .json, we don't need that, come on. The joke here if we want to, or we just give back the whole result. And well, for the fetch joke with ID, we can do actually the same. It's a bit, I know it's a bit less dry than you would expect. We can just do this plus ID. And of course, now we can say if ID, return fetch joke with ID, and otherwise return fetch random joke. And that makes sense. Okay. And what we can do now is we can technically just create an endpoint. Let's say, before we create the endpoint, let's create a type. Say types.ts. Say type, export type joke. Because we have an ID, which is a string. We have the joke, which is a string, and we have status, which is a number, which we don't really care about, but it's there. And now, of course, we can say over here, and here we pass this as a generic, and say we get joke, which is pretty cool. We import all the missing imports, which is just one. Even do import type, if we're really clean here. Okay, so far so good. And now, let's create our jokes API and write jokes random.ts. In here, another event handler, and we say return, well, fetch joke. Nothing. That's it. Also here you notice we have this event which we don't really need, so we can even make it shorter for now. This is like one line, and once again, this fetch joke here, if we check that out, we see, okay, fine, let's go there. It automatically imports from the server utils. Once again, you don't need any auto imports. TS is working out of the box. And if we, one sec, if we now go to jokes random, we get the joke. Yes?
The types that you imported, did you pre-make that, or where did they come from?
The types, so
yeah,
the joke type I just wrote. The fetch joke here is also what we just wrote.
No, there is a
in here, you mean this?
Yeah.
Nitro import this?
Line 1.
Line 1. Oh, this is what we just wrote in here. This is just this.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the type we import there. And we can also just put it there because we don't need it anywhere else, but I'd rather have them globally available because I mostly use them throughout the application. Okay, so now we fetch these jokes, and this works. It's random, works fine. Similar to what we do in Nuxt, we can also do here, like we can give an ID here, and we can here say, yeah, do what you want. Okay, maybe that was not, fine. And here we can say we have the event, and we can say event.query.id, which is not exactly correct because we want the params, which are in the context, params.id, or we can just say get router param event ID. This works the same way. So now we do the same as before. Let's take this ID here and put it here, and we get the same joke again and again. So basically we wrote a little backend for front end. And now you think, cool, we did the same in the front end, what's the benefit? Fair question. Let's do a little challenge and say, oh, we can do that. Let's fetch the jokes, and always when you fetch a joke, let's put that in some kind of storage. And let's say we save the 10 most recent jokes. So whenever we fetch a random joke, it comes in there. Whenever we fetch a joke in general, it goes in there. And somehow I want to display them. So how we do that? Well, we go, not in this auto-generated file, because that doesn't need to change, back into our jokes util. And here we say, you know what? Technically, we can say, I don't know, const joke is ID. And then we fetch it. And otherwise, of course, we don't. We just fetch the random joke. And the joke we want to save somehow, right? So here, save the joke to a file. And we have another server-side function, which is called useStorage. So that's also built in straight away. And we can use server assets jokes and here we can say, okay, let's set an item. And let's say recent.json. And we want to set it to the joke. Okay, so we do this. Now let's fetch the joke again. Nothing else happens. And if we might want to await that. I think set items there. Yes, and we need to also make that whole thing async and also probably await this here. Otherwise, nothing will happen. We could probably also write it nicer, but still. Okay, so far so good. Let's try it again. We do that. And if we check that out properly, there should be the file, but it's not there. Let's try it, I think server assets. Otherwise, I'll quickly check it in documentation because I also don't know everything by heart. Let's see. We do the same fetch joke. ID, not ID, that's fine. We refresh this a few times. That's also happening. And do we see it? No, we see it. Okay, it's asset server jokes. Always tricky. That's why we just save it straight away and say const storage name, is because we don't want to mess it up again like I just did. That, and we say const file name, or let's say it's actually item name because this can be anything, is recent.json. Perfect. So let's put it in here. We have the file name, not file, come on, file, oh, we said item name. Come on, there we go. Okay, and in this assets here, we have this recent.json, it's exactly this in there. So we are able to save one joke. And how we do that, once again, this is another package. So in the Nuxt ecosystem, there are lots of packages that can be used in your project as well. Here it's auto-import and available, but you can also straight away use that in whatever kind of project you have. So this is called unstorage. It's in the un.js organization. And in here, you can exactly do that. And the best part is, now we saw it for the file system. This works in a browser with local storage. This works with workers. And you have lots of drivers that are built in. So you can save to a KV storage, like the Cloudflare KV storage, Vercel, to Azure, Redis, MongoDB, to a GitHub repository even if you want to. Yeah, I'm not joking. So also through HTTPS. And you can build your own driver as well if it doesn't fit your needs. It's also not that difficult to write a driver because you just have to implement the methods to get the stuff, set the stuff, and so on. So yeah, we had that already. This is the fun part. Everything what we built during building Nuxt 3, we try to make it decoupled and isolate. So the Nitro server, for example, that we use right now, you can use a standalone instead of Express. I did it already, and it's a breeze. It's fun. Even other meta frameworks, like for example Solid, is building Solid Start right now. They are also betting on Vue and Nitro to power their framework. So ideally, this is once again something in the line of, let's say, Vue and other amazing things that have been built that come out as, okay, it was meant for the Vue ecosystem, but it spreads out to all the people who want to adopt it. Another framework, Analog.js, in the Angular universe, they also adopted Nitro, and probably many more will follow. Probably not Next.js though, but yeah. Okay, so we have that saver item, but we're not really done yet. We want to do a bit more. So actually, we probably want to say, let's get the current items first, because I want to say that the last 10 or something. So let's say const items is get item, because it's just one JSON, it's like this. Or if it's not available, an empty array. And I'm afraid this has to go for a second. So we have our items, which is either an array with existing jokes or not. And in the end, we say, can you even name this jokes? And now we say jokes, new jokes. It's jokes.concat, or we can even push, say, okay, we concat that with the jokes. Yeah, okay, we might have to type that here as joke. That might be useful, nice. And then we can also say dot slice 0 to 9 to get only the last 10 jokes. And now we can say, okay, we set that back to the new jokes. And what we do now is in our index here, we can just say, now comes the beauty of the, we didn't even have an API route yet, so not the beauty yet. Let's bring that on first. API jokes recent.ts, another Nitro event handler. We just in here say, okay, you know what? We don't need an event or anything. Let's go straight away and say const items. Probably, if we're really nice, we put it in here. Let's say async function get recent jokes, return technically what we have over here. And yes, get item. Where's the joke here? We don't need that. But these were the options. We can ignore that anyway. Now we can reuse that, put it in here, which is pretty good practice, I would say. It says possibly null, that's true. So also here, we have that, and it should not be null, actually. It should be fairly okay. Anyway, it's joke or null. Well, okay. Fine. And here we say, okay, let's just straight away return get recent jokes, or if it doesn't exist, it's also okay. Now it says, okay, you know what? We didn't export the function, so it can't really auto-import that, which is a bit unfortunate. So let's quickly do that, and we're almost done. It will detect it in a bit. In the meantime, let's go to jokes recent, and we see it's kind of empty. It does nothing. Let's refresh this for a few times. Go to API jokes recent. We have the same joke in there for a few times. We go to random. Do not disturb is off, that's great. Random. And we have these in here as well. Okay, so what we can do now is, first of all, quickly roll the window. And now here we can say /API jokes recent. In here, if that would be fixed, otherwise we can import it as well. Nothing stops you from not using auto imports, that's also fine. And here we say, okay, we know these are, let's say, data 0. If we say it definitely exists, the joke, we can access that. So we know these are actually jokes. And now we just render them and go back to our localhost 3000. And we have all the jokes there. Make it a little bit nicer. ULLI for joke and data that will exist, and do joke.joke. Yeah, can be nicer, I know. And here we go. We have the recent jokes because we fetched one the whole time and all the others. And now when we fetch a random joke, it will be saved to the storage. After 10 jokes, it will be cut off. The first one will be removed. Perfect. And we're good to go. So, and once again, this can live in a Redis, in a MongoDB, wherever, with just things straight away from the Nuxt in the OnJS ecosystem. And yeah, I think that concludes the live coding experience. So to sum it up, there are way more things. We took a look at the DevTools, but there are way more things on there. You can like discover the payload things, so everything that's safe for use fetch or use async data. You can even run a VS Code in your DevTools, so code in your application. So you build your application with the DevTools in your. It's a bit of Inception style, but it works and it's really fun. And once again, regarding deployment, it works on over 10 plus platforms without problems, especially Netlify and Vercel. Zero config, you can just run them. We also have Deno and Band support, so supporting the latest Edge tools. I see some people liking that, that's great, happy to hear that. And as I mentioned before, own presets are possible too. So yeah, we talked about a lot. There's way more runtime config to manage end variables and to change things during runtime, so you don't have to rebuild your application. Extends is a really killer feature where you have a base application and can just put an application on top of it that imports all the things before. Lots of advanced stuff there as well, error handling, and so on and so on and so on. If you're interested in that, there are quite some things out there, documentation. I also did a few videos, but to summarize all the things, universal deployment is very easy with Nuxt. The developer experience is really lovely, and I mean, developer experience is super important to keep us happy. Plus, it's performant out of the box, so also the users will be happy, unless you do some things with your application. That's on you then. And yeah, to summarize, Nuxt is way more than Vue on steroids, and way more than just Vue and a bit of magic. It's a progressive app-level framework to reduce the friction around developing your app. I want to say thanks to my sponsors, much appreciated to keep me working on open source, and thanks to you for your attention. Thank you, everybody. The slides and process can be found there. I'll also tweet them, and you can scan the QR code if you want to. I'll leave it on for a bit. So, yeah, we're almost on point. Are there any questions left by any chance? Yes?
Yeah, so I know nothing about Vue. So I'm wondering what are the features that are part of Vue and what is part of Nuxt?
Yeah.
What do you show now? Like, for
So
example, the auto imports?
it's all based on Nuxt. So the only thing that's like based on Vue, to like make it very simple, for example, we can say use route comes from Vue router. We have functionalities like a ref, so the data here that you can access with like data.value, and this is totally reactive, computed properties and so on. And of course the syntax itself, like the script setup part, this is all Vue, but most of the functions we've seen, like the use fetch, comes from Nuxt, for example. Mainly all the composables we used and everything Nuxt config is from Nuxt or one of the underlying packages.
Okay. Also the type safety, I guess?
The end-to-end type safety, yes, as well, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, yes.
One question. Does Nuxt also run smoothly with very strict content security policy rules?
Does Nuxt run smooth very strict CSP? Yes, it can. Out of the box, I am not sure actually, but I know that people made it happen. So
There's a Nuxt security.
there's Nuxt security package as well. That's correct. That's also worth checking out, especially setting CSP there too. Yeah, that's true.
Can be configured in Nuxt, the CSP header. So.
Yes, as the headers can be configured. Yeah, absolutely. You can also have something we didn't really get into, the route rules to like do all the rendering. You can also set there, or set that header for this route, and yeah, lots of ways to configure stuff. Exactly. If there are any other questions, as I mentioned before, please just shoot me a message on, I don't know, Twitter, Mastodon, LinkedIn, anywhere. Even send me an email if you want to. Thanks for being around, and catch you for a drink and some good music. Thanks, everybody.